overpasses because of where our temperatures are sitting right now. You'll notice the alert day is largely for this wintry mix. So that means at times it could be rain, could be a little bit of sleet. I'm not concerned with a freezing rain setup given how much dry air we have still in our atmosphere, and you could get some snowflakes mixing in. Why do I say this is an interesting kind of setup? Because if you look at where the moisture values are, we're sitting mid to upper 20s. If you really want to see a really kind of heavy rainfall, snowfall, it doesn't really matter what kind of event you're talking about, you need that dew point temperature to be as close to that actual air temperature as humanly possible. We're close in some spots, not in all, but where we do have some of those higher rates of activity, it's possible you could be seeing a heavier clip of maybe some sleet, maybe a little bit of that rain trying to fall across parts of Northeast Ohio, but you're going to start battling some warmer air trying to mix in. So yes, radar looks very impressive, but keep in mind a lot of this is evaporating as it passes through some of that drier air before it actually makes its way to the ground. So where I would be concerned if we did have some issues, it's likely going to be places like Akron down towards Canton, places off towards the east where you have some of those higher rates of precipitation. And you'll notice radar picking up where we have the potential that some of that could be more wintry in nature, mainly off towards the east, while areas farther west, you're transitioning towards more rain, and that all has to do with where that actual air temperature sits. The more we get into the upper 30s, which more of us are getting to that point to lower 40s, the more we're going to start to see this become just a cold rain scenario for us at times as we go through the rest of this afternoon. So not a complete washout, but we will have a couple more pockets that I think are possible headed into this evening. I'll walk you through the latest data on your future view coming up.
Cold and cloudy out there. It is a 19 first alert weather day. The next hour or so could get a little slick in some spots, it sounds like, Erika.
Yeah, what we're really watching is some of the rainfall or snowfall rates, as the case may be. If they're intense enough, they may be able to drop a little bit more of that activity through some of this drier air that it's been largely battling through a good majority of this morning. And you may, on, say, some bridges and overpasses, get some isolated slick spots. So we don't want you to be caught off guard. If you're going to be traveling across Northeast Ohio, most roads are fine, and then you hit one of those bridges or those overpasses where that temperature can get just a little bit cooler, and maybe you get a little glazing of ice that tries to form on that. Really, this is all associated with an area of low pressure. And if you look down towards the Cincinnati area, that's where all the moisture is basically parked. We've got some drier air on the farther northern side of this system, which is where Northeast Ohio finds itself in this particular scenario. And so it's been a little bit more of a struggle to get a lot of that moisture to make its way all to the ground. Now, if you get a heavier burst of activity moving through, sometimes that can overcome some of that drier air. And those are the spots that you'd have to watch for when it comes to any issues that you may potentially run into if you're traveling across Northeast Ohio. Here's your future view. We'll take you through the rest of this afternoon. Notice a lot of this scattered activity still continues as temperatures warm upper 30s to about lower 40s. But the bigger battle is still going to be some of that drier air the later we get into this afternoon. So yes, even as that temperature comes down a little bit, I don't necessarily think we're going to be dealing with, widespread issues for us headed into this evening. You may get one last batch of rain, especially across some of our southern zones, before this system finally clears out of here by about midnight tonight. And then we really are just left with a little bit more of that cloud cover as we go through the day tomorrow. But you'll notice improvements are on the way for tomorrow. And that's going to be the good news for us. Temperatures rebounding into the mid-40s, a dry day, and really one that we don't have too many issues with weather-wise, even as we get closer and closer to the end of this week. In fact, the only small hiccup that you have even in this weather pattern actually comes through on Friday with a quick moving system that tries to give us a couple showers first thing in the morning, mainly up near the lakeshore. Outside of that, temperatures will continue to rebound as we look ahead towards the weekend, back into the upper 40s to about lower 50s, which is pretty seasonable for where we should be for this time of the year, and generally a pretty dry outlook. That will continue to bring a warming trend in for the start of this next week, but I'll give you the first alert now. There looks to be a little bit more activity trying to roll in, potentially prior to Thanksgiving. So that is something the team will be watching very closely as we get more data coming in. And of course, as it may pertain to some of your Thanksgiving holiday travel plans mid to late week.